Buongiorno, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Your resident holder of the Dark Dimension of Despondos at your service. Oh, shit. And the Dark Dimension got ash on him. How appropriate. God, I hate that shit. I love the elegance of smoking, but I hate its drawbacks. Well, yesterday with chatting with my dad, we actually had a really, really good time. We were able to discuss stuff without arguing, which is rare. Dad just has to keep himself in check, and I got to keep myself in check. I think when I don't keep myself in check, Dad still kind of keeps himself in check, more so than I do. It's only when when he gets out of check, then I have to match him, because most of the time I've always been on the defensive, so you gotta become defensive in order to match his offense. And I made sure I was good and liquored up when we started to discuss stuff too, so it helped me to maintain control. Like if my dad brought up the abortion thing, which he did, of course, but he only kind of side mentioned it, but I just said, Dad, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this. It's got too much, not enough time. So that was the composure of the night. But one of the things that we were talking about, and as we were expanding on the subject, and one of the things that Dad does not do like I do, he doesn't research certain things that I research. That's why I come up with the things that he wonders where I'm coming up with it. We don't always have the rapport correctly, but because I have my drinks, we did. But we were talking about capitalism, we were talking about socialism, and of course he brought up, saying that Barack Obama's doing Hitler-like things, but there's plenty of countries where the leaders are doing Hitler-like things, and I'm not talking about, rounding up mass amounts of people and having them exterminated, but political-wise and government-wise. But, you got to remember that even though Hitler did what he did, he was still doing other things, country. That's why he got elected. So he promised, Germany greatness. But now I didn't actually point this out, and I just thought about it. But I have a theory that even if Hitler did not want to wage war on Poland, and didn't want to take France, and didn't want to take Russia, and didn't want to exterminate the Jews and people life unworthy of life, he still would have done all the other things. His wanting to wage war and take over the world, wouldn't have necessarily been there of doing the things that he did politically. It led to that, and that might have been as part of his plan, but in order to get to that point, he had to do what he was doing. But there's plenty of politicians that do politically like what Hitler did without the bad stuff. What I did is I brought up the example of the countries that have the best economies in the world and the ones that are the happiest. Well, not necessarily the best economies, but that say that they're the happiest, like Denmark, France, England, Norway, well, in Germany too. And it's funny because, Germany is up there on the scale, and a lot of people who've lived there that now live in the United States think that Germany's better. I mean, as bad as it is to say, Hitler most likely set up Germany for greatness here in the future, even though they went through hell to get it. And if you analyze our history, we did a lot of bad things, and look where we're at. We take for granted that we have our great country, but we did a lot of bad things to get it. We took the land away from the Indians. We did lots of atrocities. So a lot of the imposing things that we did is why we've been such a great nation. But that's made us spoiled too. Prosperity, even if you work hard, you set up things so it makes it easier. It spoils you because that's just human nature. We're a limited species. And we always try to find the easiest path. And in conclusion of that, because we are that type of people, we as a nation are basically a baby nation. If we were a person, we'd be a baby. We'd be a toddler. We're growing a little bit, but we're like about 3 years old. 3, 4, maybe 5. Maybe not even 5. We're 5-year-old. We're 4-year-old. And behind every great fortune or behind every great success is a great crime. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. People take that for granted. People think that success will come to you if you do the right thing. Well, you may do the right thing, but there's plenty of other people under you or with you that will do the wrong thing, or they'll do something wrong along the way. But see, then people single that out, and then they think that, oh, well, that's why companies went that's why companies fell to their demise, or nations fell to their demise. Well, yes, but the difference is just they got caught. But see, with America, because we are a 4-year-old child, our mentalities are rooted in our own whims. And laws are passed as such. Politicians, we're a republic because we elect officials to go to Washington and to do things for us. We hire them to vote for us. But they go there and they do their own thing. They have their own agenda in mind, their personal agenda. They try to help us, but they try to do it within the confines of their own whims. So now Obama is trying to change that. He's trying to write laws and write bills so that people who are getting cheated will get their what they deserve. And the problem with that is that it does in order to make change, you have to in order to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. It's the facts. When big business gets out of hand because the government doesn't have enough checks and balances, then government has to step in. Then it has to be a little bit bigger than people think that it needs to be. But that's just because they're paranoid, because they live by the colloquialisms that are told to them about how Big Brother is going to take over, and then they have this unwarranted fear. They don't really know. They only use their emotions, and that's how they vote. But the problem is it's like, the government raises taxes so that on businesses so that they can give more money to the public. Well, what happens then is that then the companies decide to go overseas, or they pay shit wages. So there's a lot of freedoms that businesses have in a free trade society that allows them to get through a loophole. Well, Obama's trying to close those loopholes, I think. At least, or at least figure out ways to encourage them to stay. But the problem is then we can't, say, trickle down economics. Doesn't work. Not the way it's supposed to. Because you're trying to rely on the goodwill of a company. It's like, well, if we lower their taxes and we give them better overhead, they're going to let that trickle down. Not unless you pass a law so that they do. Because how would you guarantee that they will? You can't. The only way that you can make goodwill happen for sure is if you make them do it.